In the small town of Ashford, Pennsylvania, there's an old funeral home that's been standing for over a century. Locals call it the Thompson House, named after its original owner, Edgar Thompson, who opened it in 1903. For most of its history, it served the community quietly and respectfully. People came to say goodbye to their loved ones, and life went on. But there's a part of the building that hardly anyone talks about. A part that was never on the public tours, never shown in brochures, and always locked. The basement. In August of 1997, a man named Derek Wallace, age 38, took a job as a night janitor at the Thompson Funeral Home. He had moved back to Ashford to care for his mother after she had a stroke, and he needed the work. The job was quiet, he liked that. No customers to deal with, no loud coworkers. Just cleaning, mopping, and keeping the building neat between services. Derek worked alone, starting at 8 p.m. and leaving around 3 in the morning. The place always gave him the chills, but he told himself it was just his imagination. Funeral homes are naturally creepy, he thought. You get used to it. At least, that's what he told himself, until the night of September 12th. That night started like any other. Derek unlocked the front door, turned off the alarm, and began his routine, emptying trash bins, wiping down counters, vacuuming the carpeted chapel floor. It wasn't until just after midnight that he noticed something strange. The door to the basement was open. He had passed that hallway dozens of times. The basement door was always closed, always locked with a rusted key hanging in the main office. But tonight, it stood open just a crack. Not wide, just enough to see the dark steps leading down. At first, he assumed someone had forgotten to close it. Maybe one of the day staff had gone down earlier. Still, something about it made his skin crawl. The air around the door felt colder. Heavy. Like a pressure pushing against his chest. He walked into the office and checked the wall hook where the basement key usually hung. It was still there. That's when his stomach dropped. If the key hadn't been used, how had the door opened? He stood in front of the basement steps for a long time. Part of him wanted to just shut the door and pretend he hadn't seen anything. But something tugged at his curiosity. He pulled out his small flashlight, took a deep breath, and started walking down. The steps creaked under his weight. The smell changed, less like flowers and chemicals, and more like dirt. Like something wet and old. The walls were lined with peeling plaster, and spiderwebs dangled from the ceiling like stringy curtains. When he reached the bottom, he saw it wasn't just one room, it was a hallway. Narrow. With low pipes and flickering utility lights, he'd never realized how big the basement was. None of the floor plans showed this. At the end of the hallway was a metal door. Painted black. No sign, no label. It was shut, but not locked. Derek hesitated, then placed his hand on the handle. It was ice cold. When he pushed it open, the air hit him like a freezer. But what disturbed him more was what was inside. The room was filled with metal gurneys, some with old, yellowed sheets. Some, not empty. On one of the tables was a body. No covering. Pale. Skin tight over bones. Its eyes were open. But it wasn't fresh. It looked decades old. Mummified almost. Yet something about it seemed wrong. He turned to leave, and that's when he noticed the wall behind him. There were photographs. Hundreds of them, all pinned in rows, reaching from floor to ceiling. Each showed someone different, some young, some old, some in suits, others in hospital gowns. Many of them looked asleep. But one thing was the same in every picture, the setting. They were all taken in that very basement. Some photos dated back to 1951. Others as recent as 1996. He took a shaky step backward, and his foot hit something. A recorder. Old, dusty. He picked it up, pressed the play button, and a crackly voice came through. It was a man, speaking calmly. Subject 34 unresponsive. No pulse. Recording final observations before transfer. Eyes opened at 3:17 a.m. Movement detected. Derek dropped the recorder. His flashlight flickered. Then died. For a few seconds, he stood frozen in total blackness. And then, something moved. He couldn't say what it was. A shift in the air. A scrape. But it was behind him. Slow. Deliberate. He ran. He didn't stop to close doors. Didn't care about the mess. He sprinted up the stairs, slammed the basement door shut, and quit the job the next morning without an explanation. He never went back. But he did tell his story, years later, on a late-night radio show called Midnight Static. The episode aired once, on October 31, 2004, and was never replayed. Callers flooded the station for days, but the tape was lost. 2 weeks later, the Thompson funeral home caught fire. Officially, it was blamed on faulty wiring in the walls. But people who lived nearby swear the fire started in the basement. And in the weeks that followed, several neighbors said they saw shadows moving through the ruins at night, long after the last flames were gone. Today, nothing remains but a crumbling foundation. Grass has overtaken the lot, and the town built a memorial garden over the space. But locals still say, if you go near it after midnight, the ground feels cold, too cold for summer, and sometimes, you can hear faint scratching sounds coming from underneath. Like someone, or something, is still down there. Waiting.